My shift at Harbor and Honey always started the same way. I tied my apron, tucked my hair into a loose bun, and reminded myself that tables don't care if you're 24 and still figuring life out. Tables want water, menus, and someone who can remember that table 7 hates ice. The cafe sat 2 blocks from the Santa Barbara waterfront, close enough that the air always carried a hint of salt and sunscreen. By mid-morning, we served tourists in wide hats, locals in workout clothes, and regulars who believed our honey lavender latte could solve every problem known to humankind. I was restocking sugar packets when Ms. Brown, our manager, leaned over the counter and lowered her voice. "NYNX, we might get someone important today." "Important like the health inspector?" I asked, already bracing myself. "Important like money," she said, eyes bright. "If a woman comes in wearing dark sunglasses and pretending she doesn't know she's recognizable, be normal. Like, extra normal." "That's not helpful," I muttered, but I smiled anyway. Ms. Brown's idea of calm was a 5-alarm fire with good intentions. The doorbell chimed right at 11:07. I looked up out of habit and saw a woman step inside as if she'd walked into the wrong story and decided to stay anyway. She wore simple jeans, a cream sweater, and those sunglasses Ms. Brown warned me about. Her hair, deep brown with a natural wave, fell to her shoulders. She paused just long enough to take in the room, like she was mapping exits, corners, and the safest route to anonymity. Then she lifted her sunglasses slightly, and I recognized her from a billboard near the highway, Callista Renford. The Callista Renford. Tech founder. Quiet billionaire. The kind of person who donated libraries and still somehow made headlines for buying a company without raising her voice. I should have frozen. I should have run to Ms. Brown and whispered, "You were right, and I hate it when you're right." Instead, my feet moved before my brain could catch up. "Hi," I said, approaching with menus tucked under my arm. "Welcome to Harbor and Honey. Table for 1. Her mouth curved, not quite a full smile, but close. "If you have a corner table, that would be ideal." "We do," I said, and led her to a small table near a bookshelf we kept for the neighborhood take-one-leave-one exchange. It was half decor, half accidental community center. The table sat in a pocket of quiet where you could look out at the street without feeling like the street was looking back. Callista sat, folded her sunglasses, and set them beside her phone. Her phone looked normal. She looked like someone who had never owned a normal phone in her life. "What can I get you to drink?" I asked, clicking my pen. "Tea," she said after a moment. "If you have something without trendy foam." I laughed once, surprised at myself. "No foam tea, I promise. We have chamomile, peppermint, English breakfast, and a jasmine green." "Jasmine," she decided. Then, after a beat, "And whatever pastry is most popular, as long as it doesn't have 17 ingredients." "That eliminates the cruffin," I said. "The what?" "The croissant muffin situation," I explained. "People love it. People also fear it." Her eyes warmed. "I'll take the safer option." "I'll bring you a blueberry scone," I said. "It's popular and only mildly dramatic." As I turned to go, she added, "NYNX." I glanced back. She pointed gently at my name tag. "Your name. It's nice." "Thanks," I said, and the word landed strangely in my chest, like a small coin dropped into a jar I didn't know I was carrying. I brought her tea and scone, set them down, and gave my usual spiel about refills. She thanked me with the kind of careful politeness that suggested she'd learned long ago that people could turn weird around her. And people did. I saw it happen in real time. A man at the counter squinted, then whispered to his friend. A teenager leaned too far over her smoothie and nudged her mom. Ms. Brown pretended to wipe a spot on the pastry case that had never existed, keeping one eye on Callista like she was a rare bird that might fly away. Callista noticed, of course. Her shoulders stayed relaxed, but her gaze slid toward the window as if she'd rather look at anything else. So I did the one thing I could do. I treated her like a person who wanted tea and a quiet table. When I checked on her later, she had set her phone face down and pulled a paperback from our shelf. "Any good?" I asked. She angled the cover toward me. "The Secret Garden. My grandmother used to read it to me," she said. I saw it and it felt like a small break. I leaned on the edge of the table for half a second, an old habit I tried not to do, because leaning could be interpreted as lingering, and lingering could be interpreted as wanting something. Still, I couldn't help it. "That one makes me feel like I'm 8, I admitted. "Like if I look hard enough, I'll find a hidden door somewhere." She met my eyes. "Do you still believe in hidden doors?" The question seemed too big for a cafe with sugar packets and chipped mugs. I searched for a light answer and found a true one instead. "I believe in finding new rooms in your life," I said. "Sometimes the door is just a choice you keep avoiding." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she nodded once, slow and thoughtful. "That's a good way to put it," she said. The lunch rush arrived, and I moved between tables like a pinball. Orders, refills, extra napkins, someone wanting their toast more toasted but not burnt, which is a request that belongs in a museum. Still, I kept noticing Callista in the corner. Not because she was famous, because she looked calmer when she was reading, and something about that calm made me want to protect it, like a candle flame in a breezy room. When she stood to leave, she walked to the counter and paid without making a show of it. Then she turned toward me as I carried 2 plates to table 3. "NYNX, she called softly. I shifted the plates to one hand. "Yeah. Thank you," she said, "for being normal." I let out a small breath. "Anytime." She hesitated as if she might say more, then simply nodded and left. Ms. Brown swooped toward me the second the door closed. "That was her," she whispered, like Callista might still hear through glass and distance. "That was Callista Renford. What did she order? Did she like it? Did she say anything about the place? Did she?" "She ordered tea and a scone," I said, steering Ms. Brown away from the counter before she climbed onto it. "She liked it. And she read a book." Ms. Brown grabbed my sleeve. "NYNX. People like her don't just wander in. This could be a thing." "A thing like what?" I asked. "A thing like a review. Or an investment. Or a viral moment." Ms. Brown's eyes went dreamy. "Or she might buy the cafe and turn it into an artisanal." "She's not buying anything," I said, though my certainty was mostly a wish. "She wanted quiet. We gave her quiet." Ms. Brown huffed. "You're too grounded. It's suspicious." I returned to work, and by the end of my shift, Callista Renford felt like a story I'd tell my cousin later, the kind of story that gets a no way and a send pics, and then disappears into the long list of things that happened once. Except she came back. 3 days later, the bell chimed at 11:12, and there she was. No sunglasses this time, hair tucked behind one ear, wearing the same expression of gentle caution. She chose the same corner table. I walked over with menus and pretended I was not doing mental cartwheels. "Welcome back," I said. "Jasmine tea again?" Her mouth lifted slightly. "Yes, please. And do you have any recommendations today, NYNX?" I liked the way she said my name, as if it mattered. As if it wasn't just a label but a small greeting. "If you want something cozy," I said, "the tomato basil soup is good. It tastes like someone cares about you." She looked amused. "That's a strong review for soup." "It's accurate," I insisted. "And if you want something sweet, the lemon loaf is less dramatic than the cruffin situation." "You keep mentioning that," she said. "It haunts us," I replied. She laughed, not loudly, but openly, and a couple of heads turned. Callista's laugh didn't demand attention. It created warmth. like someone turning on a small light. I brought her tea and soup. When I returned later, she had another book from our shelf, this time a collection of Mary Oliver poems. "You like poetry?" I asked. "I like words that don't waste time," she said. "Poetry does that sometimes." I nodded, careful. "Sometimes it wastes time beautifully." She looked at me for a moment. "Do you write?" The question startled me so much that I nearly dropped the spoon I was collecting. "A little," I admitted. "Nothing serious." Callista tilted her head. "What kind of little?" "The kind that stays in my notes app," I said. "The kind that never becomes brave enough to be seen." Her eyes softened in a way that made my heart feel unsteady, like it was trying to remember a song. "Maybe it deserves a chance," she said. It would have been easy to chalk her kindness up to billionaire manners, say something encouraging and move on. But her voice didn't sound like a line. It sounded like she meant it. For the next week, she became a strange new pattern in my routine. Callista Renford, arriving near the start of lunch, ordering tea, reading from our bookshelf, leaving quietly. Sometimes she stayed an hour. Sometimes two. Always in the corner table, always calm, always polite. We didn't talk much beyond the normal waitress customer rhythm. Still, little things began to appear in the space between us, as if the air was writing its own small conversation. One day she noticed a bandage on my finger and asked, "Kitchen bite?" "Cardboard," I confessed. A box fought back. Another day I mentioned I was taking a community college class at night, business basics, because I wanted options. She listened like I was describing something important, not something I felt embarrassed about. Then, on a Thursday that looked like every other Thursday, sun high, sidewalks bright, the smell of coffee and toasted bread filling the cafe, Callista set her book down before I could turn away. "NYX," she said, and her tone had a careful seriousness that made me stop. "Everything okay?" I asked automatically, scanning the table like she might be unhappy with the soup or the spoon. "Yes," she said. "I have a question, and you can say no." My stomach tightened. The words "you can say no" always carried weight, even when offered kindly. "I'm listening," I said. She took a breath. "I'm looking for a local partner for a small community project. Not a corporate sponsorship. Not a press event. Something practical." I blinked. "Like what?" "A scholarship fund for service workers," she said simply. "For people who want to study, train, or start something new. I've done larger programs, but they turn into machines. I want something that stays human-sized." That sounded like a headline waiting to happen, even if she didn't want it to be. It also sounded like the sort of thing people promised when they wanted to look good, then abandoned the moment it got boring. I studied her face. I didn't see performance there. I saw someone choosing her words carefully, like she didn't want to scare the idea away. "Why me?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Because you treated me like a person, not a headline. Because you care about your work. And because you mentioned you're taking classes at night. You understand both sides of it." I glanced toward the counter. Ms. Brown was steaming milk, and my coworker Miles was stacking plates. The cafe hummed, ordinary and safe. My life was ordinary and safe. Callista's question felt like a door cracked open to a room I'd never seen. I swallowed. "What would I have to do?" "Help me find the right people to receive it," she said. "Help me keep it grounded. I can fund it. I can set up the structure. But I can't pretend I know what it feels like to work doubles and still show up to class." I wanted to say yes instantly, because it sounded meaningful and because she was looking at me like my opinion mattered. I also wanted to say no, because nothing in my life had ever mixed well with people who could buy buildings without blinking. "I need to think," I said. Relief flickered across her face. Relief that I wasn't offended, maybe, or relief that I was taking it seriously. "Of course," she said. Can I leave you my email? She reached for a pen, then paused. Or would that be too much? It's fine, I said, and handed her my order pad. She wrote neatly, Callista at, a short domain that probably belonged to her. When she left, she didn't mention the project again. She didn't push. She didn't ask for an answer at the door like it was a transaction. She simply gave me a possibility and trusted me not to drop it. That night, after my class, I sat on my tiny apartment balcony with leftover pasta and stared at her email on my phone. The city around me glowed with warm porch lights and the distant sound of someone playing music too quietly to identify. I thought about my mom, who had worked diners and grocery stores and told me education wasn't a ladder you climbed once, it was a door you had to keep opening. I thought about my own half-finished poems. I thought about Callista's face when she said, I want something human-sized. I also thought about the risk. If this went wrong, it would hurt more than my pride. It could affect my job, the cafe, and the little piece I'd built. In the end, I typed, I'm interested. Can we meet somewhere public and talk details? Also, I'm not good at fancy words. If that's a deal breaker, you're in trouble. Her reply came 10 minutes later. Public is perfect. And if you bring honest words, I'll bring the non-fancy version of mine. 2 days later, we met at the Santa Barbara Public Library, in a bright room with long tables and a view of palm trees outside. No cameras. No entourage. Just Callista in a navy cardigan, a notebook, and an expression that looked hopeful. I've never had a meeting in a library, I told her as I sat down. She smiled. Libraries make me behave. That's a strong endorsement, I said. She opened her notebook. Thank you for coming. I nodded, then hesitated. Before we start, I need to say something. Please, she said, attentive. I don't want to be used as a look, I'm relatable accessory, I said, forcing the words out cleanly. I don't think you're doing that. But I need to say it. Callista didn't look offended. If anything, she looked relieved. Thank you, she said. I don't want that either. I'm tired of projects that turn people into symbols. I want names. Real names. Real outcomes. I exhaled. We talked for an hour. She had done her homework. Local programs, community college costs, certification tracks, childcare barriers. She listened when I told her what made people give up. Unpredictable schedules, sudden car repairs, no one to cover a shift, and the quiet shame of asking for help. When she asked what the scholarship should cover, I surprised myself by saying, not just tuition. She looked up. Say more. Gas cards, I said. Textbooks. A laptop if someone needs it. One emergency repair so someone doesn't lose their job and drop out. Small things that decide everything. Callista wrote quickly. That makes sense. I watched her hand move across the page, steady and focused, and felt something shift in me. This wasn't charity as a performance. This was problem-solving with care. Toward the end, she closed her notebook and said, There's something else. I braced myself again. I'd like to keep coming to the cafe, she said, voice quieter. Not as a strategy. I like it there. The simplest sentences sometimes carry the most weight. My mind offered 1,000 interpretations, and I chose the gentlest one. She liked the calm, and maybe she liked talking to me. I like it there too, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Even when someone demands toast physics. She smiled. Toast physics. You know, I said. More toasted but not burnt. Callista's smile lingered, and I realized I liked being the reason she smiled. I liked that she didn't use her money as punctuation. I liked that she looked at me like I was a person with a whole inner life, not just someone holding a tray. As we stood to leave, she paused near the library doors. NYX, she said, then stopped, as if she was choosing the next words carefully. Can I ask you something not related to scholarships? Okay, I said. Do you want to go out with me sometime when you're not working? She asked. Just as a normal day? No agenda. My heart did a strange little jump, the kind that made me feel 15 again, like I'd heard my name in a hallway and hoped it meant what I wanted it to mean. I kept my voice steady. Yes, sure. Her shoulders relaxed, and she looked quietly pleased. Good. We picked Saturday afternoon, a small coffee shop near the art museum. We found a table near a window. Outside, people strolled past with beach towels and shopping bags. Inside, the cafe smelled like cinnamon and roasted beans. She wrapped her hands around her cup and said, "This is nice." It is, I agreed. For a while we talked about normal things. How she ended up in Santa Barbara for a few weeks, how I ended up at Harbor and Honey, how Miles kept trying to convince me to join his trivia team. Callista told me she liked museums when they were quiet and that she missed being anonymous in grocery stores. Then she asked, "Do you ever feel like you're living two lives?" I nodded slowly. Work me and real me? Yes, she said. Except sometimes I don't remember which one is real. The honesty in her voice pulled honesty out of me. I think real is the parts that keep showing up, I said. Even when you're tired. Even when you're scared. She looked at me like she was storing the sentence somewhere. Can I tell you something? She asked. Yeah. I'm not lonely all the time, she said carefully. But I'm often separate. I understood that feeling more than I expected to. Not because I was famous, but because I'd spent years being the responsible one, the helpful one, the one who didn't ask for too much. Being separate can happen in any life. I don't want you to feel separate right now, I said. Callista's gaze softened. Neither do I. We spent the afternoon at the art museum nearby, moving through bright rooms filled with coastal paintings and strange sculptures that looked like furniture from the future. Callista read every placard like it mattered. I teased her lightly for it, and she admitted she liked context. In one gallery, we stopped in front of a painting of two women sitting on a porch, shoulders angled toward each other, hands resting close but not touching. The scene looked ordinary, and that was what made it beautiful, like the artist had decided that quiet companionship was worth framing. Callista studied it for a long moment. That's the kind of wealth I want, she said. I glanced at her. A porch. A life where time feels gentle, she said. Where the people around you aren't there because of your last name or your bank account. Just because they chose you. The words sent warmth through me, steady and calm. I didn't reach for her hand. I didn't need to. The meaning was already there, clear as sunlight. I think you can have that, I said. But you'll have to practice letting people get close. She nodded. I'm trying. Over the next month, our lives began to overlap in small, careful ways. Callista came to the cafe like she said she would. She learned Ms. Brown's name and asked Miles about his trivia obsession. She even tried the cruffin one day and declared it unnecessarily talented. Ms. Brown acted like she'd been knighted. Outside my shifts, Callista and I met for walks along the waterfront, morning visits to the farmer's market, and a few quiet evenings at the library where we sat at the same table and worked on our separate things. She had calls sometimes, short, efficient. When she finished, she always looked slightly apologetic. You don't have to apologize for having a job, I told her once. She gave a small smile. It's not the job. It's the way it follows me. One afternoon, she invited me to visit a community center where she hoped to base the scholarship program. The building smelled like fresh paint and basketball court polish. A staff member showed us a classroom that could host evening workshops. Callista stood in the doorway, imagining. We could hold application help nights here, she said. Make it easy to apply. No complicated forms. No hoops. I turned toward her. You really mean it? I do, she said. And I want you involved as much as you want to be. Not more. Not less. That careful respect did something to me. I had dated before, briefly, clumsily, but I'd never felt this steady kind of regard. Like she wasn't trying to win me, just trying to know me. Then came the one part one hadn't planned for: attention. It started small. Someone at the cafe recognized Callista again and snapped a photo. Then a local blog posted it with a playful caption about the billionaire hiding out at a seaside cafe. The post spread, not wildly, but enough that more people began showing up with curious eyes. One day, as I carried tea to Callista's table, a woman near the window said loudly to her friend, "That's her. I wonder who she's meeting." My face grew hot. I hated being turned into a mystery for strangers. Callista noticed immediately. After I set the cup down, she spoke quietly. "NYNX, if this becomes uncomfortable for you, I will stop coming. I don't want to disrupt your work." Part of me wanted to say yes. Please, disappear, let my life go back to predictable. Another part of me, the braver part, didn't want to lose something good because other people were curious. I set my tray down and met her eyes. "I don't want you to stop coming," I said. "But we need boundaries." Callista nodded. "Tell me what you need." "I need you to let me stay just NYNX at work," I said. "No big conversations at my tables. No serious stuff in the cafe during rush. And if people get weird, we leave it alone. We don't feed it." "I can do that," she said immediately. "Thank you for telling me." The next weekend, she invited me to a small meeting with the community center director and a counselor from the community college. Callista introduced me as NYNX Stone, who knows what this should look like in real life. Not my waitress friend. Not a local girl. Not anything that made me feel small. Just my name, my role, my value. On the way out, the director pulled me aside. "You're good for her," the director said kindly. "She's brilliant, but she forgets people don't live inside spreadsheets." I watched Callista ahead of us, holding the door open for an older couple. She looked like someone trying hard to be normal, not because she wanted to pretend, but because she wanted to belong. "I think she's good for me too," I said, surprising myself with the certainty. That evening, Callista and I walked along the pier as the sun lowered, turning the water gold. Street musicians played soft guitar nearby. Kids ate ice cream too fast and regretted it loudly. The world felt simple in the best way. Callista leaned her arms on the railing and looked out. "I've been thinking about what you said," she murmured. "About hidden doors?" I asked. She smiled. "About choosing rooms you've been avoiding." I waited, letting her take her time. "I've avoided a lot," she admitted. "Not just people. Not just friendship. I've avoided being seen as myself." The words were gentle, but they landed with meaning. I didn't ask for details she wasn't ready to give. Instead, I stood beside her and let the moment be what it was. "I see you," I said simply. "The you that reads poems and wants human-sized projects and hates foam." Her laugh was quiet. That might be the most accurate description of me. We stood there for a while, listening to the sounds around us. I felt something warm and steady grow in my chest, not a sudden spark, but a slow certainty. Callista turned her head slightly. "NYNX. Yeah. I don't want to rush you," she said. "But I want to be honest. I care about you more than I expected to." My throat tightened, not from sadness, but from the sheer tenderness of it. The honesty, the care. "I care about you too," I said. "And I'm not great at fast things anyway." Her shoulders eased, and she looked relieved, like she'd been holding that truth alone and finally set it down where it could breathe. "Can we keep doing this?" she asked. Slowly, clearly. Yes, I said. We can. A few weeks later, we launched the scholarship as a quiet local program, the Harbor and Honey Steps Fund. Callista insisted the name include the cafe, not her company. Ms. Brown cried when she heard, then pretended she didn't and blamed it on seasonal allergies, even though there was nothing seasonal about her emotions. We held the first application night at the community center. I watched people file in, baristas, retail workers, servers, a hotel housekeeper, a grocery clerk, each holding hope carefully, like it was fragile. Callista didn't stand on a stage. She didn't make a speech that sounded like a commercial. She sat at a folding table with me and helped people fill out forms. She asked about their goals and listened like their answers mattered. Later, when the room emptied and we stacked chairs together, she leaned close enough for me to hear her without anyone else listening. "This is it," she said softly. "This is the room I wanted." I wiped my hands on my jeans and looked around. The fluorescent lights buzzed, the floor squeaked, and someone had left a stray pen on the table. It was not glamorous. It was perfect. "I'm glad you walked into my shift," I told her. Callista's expression turned fond, and for a second, she looked younger, less guarded. "I'm glad you were the one who took my order," she replied. When we stepped outside, the evening air felt warm and calm. We walked side by side toward the parking lot, not rushing, not hiding either. In the months that followed, my life didn't become a fairy tale. I still worked shifts. I still had homework. The cafe still ran out of spoons at the worst times. But something had changed. I had a new kind of steady in my life, someone who showed up, listened, and built something with me instead of around me. Callista remained careful with her privacy, but she stopped treating connection like a risk she had to manage. She began treating it like a choice she could make. And me. I started writing again, not just in my notes app. I joined a local workshop. I read a short piece aloud one night with my voice shaking, and when I looked up, Callista sat in the back row. She didn't clap louder than anyone else. She just watched me like she was proud in a quiet, private way. Afterward, as we walked home under a sky full of stars, she said, "You were brave." I shook my head, smiling. I was terrified. "You were brave anyway," she said. I thought about the first day she came into Harbor and Honey, wanting a corner table and a little quiet. I thought about the bookshelf, the tea, the gentle way our days had started to overlap. Maybe hidden doors weren't always dramatic. Maybe they looked like a cafe bell chiming at 11:07. Maybe they looked like a woman with a book choosing a corner table. Maybe they looked like two girls learning slowly and clearly that love could be soft, respectful, and real, without needing to be loud to be true.